The sharp scent of burnt coffee filled the cabin as a scream cut through the steady hum of the engines. Hot liquid splashed across Lena's face, staining her pink shirt in dark, uneven patches. She gasped, more from shock than pain, raising her hands to protect herself. The woman standing above her, a heavy-set blonde in an orange blouse and netted blazer, still gripped an empty paper cup, her jaw trembling with self-righteous anger. "Maybe now you'll learn not to steal someone's seat," Rachel hissed, her voice slicing through the quiet rows like a siren. Ethan's knuckles turned white around the armrest. He felt rage rise in his chest, cold, deliberate, and steady. The cabin froze. Passengers stared. Flight attendants hesitated. Even the hum of pressurized air seemed to grow heavier. He stood slowly, controlled, as coffee dripped from his wife's hair onto the floor. Lena blinked hard, wincing as the liquid stung her eyes. "I didn't steal anything," she said softly, her voice trembling with confusion and humiliation. Rachel scoffed and threw the crumpled cup onto the floor. "Oh, please. I asked for this window seat when I booked. The airline must have made a mistake, but of course Princess here couldn't switch. Some people think they own the world." Ethan turned to her, his tone quiet but dangerous. "Are you finished?" That single question carried more weight than a shout. The flight attendants snapped out of their hesitation and hurried forward. One of them, a young brunette, gently placed a hand on Rachel's shoulder. "Ma'am, please sit down. You just assaulted a passenger." Rachel's face twisted in disbelief. "Assaulted? I barely touched her. She was being difficult." Her voice rose higher, confidence feeding her outrage. "This airline is pathetic. No customer service whatsoever. I'll have your job by the time we land." The brunette tried to calm her, but Rachel shoved past and pointed at Lena, who wiped her face with trembling fingers. "She provoked me. She was smirking, looking out the window just to annoy me." "Who does that?" Ethan's jaw tightened. Every instinct screamed to defend his wife, but not here. Not now. This wasn't the place for fury. This was the place for precision. He knelt beside Lena. "You okay?" Lena nodded weakly, tears in her eyes. "It's just hot." "I'm fine." Her voice wavered, and that broke him more than the attack itself. He pressed a napkin to her cheek, wiping the coffee away. "No, you're not, but you will be." Passengers whispered behind them. Some recorded quietly, phones half raised. Their looks said everything. Disgust for Rachel, pity for Lena, curiosity about how this would end. The captain's voice came over the intercom, calm but firm. "Cabin crew, please secure the area and ensure all passengers remain seated." Rachel rolled her eyes and dropped into her seat. "Overreaction," she muttered loudly. "She'll survive. People are too sensitive these days." Ethan didn't look at her. He sat beside his wife, resting a hand over hers. His anger cooled into something sharper. A flight attendant crouched beside them. "Sir, ma'am, would you like to move to another seat?" Ethan shook his head. "No, we'll stay." His voice carried quiet authority. The attendant nodded and stepped away. Rachel laughed bitterly. "You're staying? Perfect. Maybe you'll learn how real passengers act." Ethan turned slightly, meeting her gaze with unsettling calm. "You're right. I'm learning a lot." Silence filled the cabin. The engines droned on, steady and indifferent. A steward brought a cold compress for Lena. She pressed it to her cheek and leaned into Ethan's shoulder. "Why do people act like that?" she whispered. "Because they think no one will hold them accountable," he said softly, his tone thoughtful. Rachel overheard and scoffed. "What's that supposed to mean?" He didn't answer. His calmness only made her angrier. She tugged at her blazer, muttering, "Unbelievable. I paid for business class and I'm sitting next to a drama queen and her mute husband." Ethan's fingers tapped lightly on the armrest. Steady, patient, unnerving. Minutes passed, but the tension stayed thick. When the attendants returned with drink trays, Rachel glared at them. "You better not charge me for this coffee." It didn't even last 5 minutes. The attendant ignored her, serving others first. Rachel kept ranting, voice dripping with entitlement. "I'm a frequent flyer. I'll be filing a complaint when we land. Maybe I'll talk to whoever owns this airline. Let's see how they handle bad publicity." Ethan's gaze flicked toward her, unreadable. "Be sure to do that," he said evenly. Rachel leaned back with a smug smile, mistaking his composure for weakness. "Oh, I will. People need to learn not to mess with me." Lena's fingers tightened around his hand. "Please don't engage her," she whispered. "I won't," he said softly, eyes fixed ahead. But beneath that calm voice a quiet storm brewed. The cabin seemed to feel it. Every time Rachel muttered, passengers exchanged glances, some whispering, others pretending to read while discreetly filming. An hour passed. The smell of coffee faded, but the memory lingered. Rachel finally fell silent, maybe realizing she'd gone too far, or just running out of breath. Ethan stared out the window, the horizon stretching endless and blue. His reflection was calm, but his thoughts were sharp. There were rules in his world, rules of conduct, of airspace, of power, and Rachel had broken them all. He adjusted his watch and glanced at his phone in airplane mode, picturing the network of terminals and hangars that bore his company's name. 62 airports under his control, 62 places where her arrogance would be remembered. He smiled faintly, a smile that never reached his eyes. Lena looked up at him. "What are you thinking?" "Nothing you need to worry about," he replied. "Just thinking about the landing." Outside, the engines hummed smoothly. Inside Ethan Cole's mind, the descent had already begun, not toward the runway, but toward justice. Rachel leaned back, pulling her blanket up, muttering one last time, "Can't wait to file that complaint." Ethan didn't answer. His silence said enough. The coffee had dried, but the sting remained. And as the plane cut through the clouds, the air grew heavy with unspoken anticipation. One truth settled like a storm waiting to break. Rachel had no idea who she had just humiliated. And when they landed, she would. The cabin lights dimmed to a soft amber glow as the plane reached cruising altitude. A fragile calm settled over the passengers, the kind that never lasts. It was the quiet before a storm finds its breath again. Lena sat by the window, her face still flushed from the sting, but her posture remained composed. She refused to show weakness to the woman who had humiliated her. Ethan leaned forward slightly, resting his forearms on his knees, staring at the faint reflection of clouds beyond the glass. His silence was deliberate, heavy, measured, and full of intent. Rachel, meanwhile, sat smugly in the aisle seat, scrolling through her phone with self-satisfaction painted across her face. The rhythmic tap of her nails against the screen broke the stillness. Every few moments she'd glance over, smirk, and mutter just loud enough for Lena to hear, "Next time, maybe don't sit where you don't belong." Lena's fingers tightened around her seatbelt buckle, her knuckles pale. "She's recording herself," she whispered to Ethan, her voice trembling but controlled. He nodded slightly without turning. "Let her." Rachel angled her phone, pretending to vlog. "So apparently you can't even request a simple window seat without being treated like a criminal. These people are ridiculous." A passenger nearby groaned, muttering about entitled behavior. Rachel's head snapped around. "Excuse me? Did you say something?" The man looked away, unwilling to be pulled into her drama. Ethan finally spoke, his tone calm but edged with quiet authority. "Ma'am, I think you've said enough for one flight." Rachel laughed without humor. "Oh, don't tell me you're still upset about a little coffee. Your wife's fine. She's overreacting." Lena turned, her composure cracking. "You threw hot liquid in my face." "That's not an overreaction," Rachel scoffed. "You people take everything personally. It was an accident. Maybe if you weren't so dramatic." Ethan's hand twitched slightly, not toward her, but as if to remind himself to stay composed. "An accident," he said evenly, "is when you spill coffee, not when you aim for someone's face." Rachel met his eyes, her arrogance slipping just for a moment before she hid it behind a smirk. "Oh, you think you're so calm and clever, huh? You should be thanking me for not pressing charges for the way your wife looked at me." Passengers shifted uneasily, the weight of her absurd words filling the space. Flight attendants whispered near the galley, debating what to do next. Ethan ignored her entirely, turning back to Lena. His silence unsettled Rachel more than any confrontation could. A flight attendant returned, kneeling beside Lena and offering a cup of cool water and a towel. "We're so sorry about what happened," she whispered. "Everything's been documented. The captain is aware." "Thank you," Lena murmured. Rachel rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh, for heaven's sake. Stop acting like she's dying. You people are unbelievable." Ethan looked up at the attendant. "Is there a complaint protocol for passengers who assault others mid-flight?" "Yes, sir," the attendant said softly. "Security will meet her when we land." Rachel laughed sharply. "Security for what? She's not pressing charges." "Are you, sweetheart?" Lena stayed silent. Rachel leaned back with a grin. "Didn't think so. You wouldn't want to ruin your little vacation over something so small." Ethan stared at the seat ahead, his mind working quietly. Small. The word lingered. He had built an empire on precision, airports, logistics, and flight operations across continents. He was used to turbulence. But this was personal. He tapped his fingers once, a soft rhythm only Lena noticed. She glanced at him, sensing the change in his energy. The anger had cooled into strategy. When the attendants passed again, Rachel snapped her fingers. "Excuse me, can I get something stronger than coffee this time? Maybe a glass of wine to calm my nerves. I've had a traumatic experience dealing with rude passengers." Her mock sincerity drew a few incredulous stares. The attendant hesitated. "I'm afraid alcohol service is suspended for you, ma'am." Rachel's face flushed red. "Excuse me?" "It's the captain's instruction," the attendant said carefully. Rachel let out an indignant laugh. "This is discrimination." "I know my rights." Ethan didn't turn, but a faint smirk touched his lips. Rachel crossed her arms, fuming. "You people don't know who you're dealing with. I'll be contacting airport management the moment we land. Someone's getting fired for this." Her words landed exactly where Ethan wanted them to. He leaned slightly toward the aisle, his voice calm but deliberate. "You should do that. Ask for the owner directly," Rachel glared. "Oh, I will." "Good," he replied, meeting her eyes with unnerving precision. "He'll want to hear everything." Confidence flickered in his tone, controlled, final. Rachel turned away, muttering under her breath as she pulled her orange blazer tighter, trying to hide from the eyes now watching her. Minutes passed. The plane began its descent through thin clouds, cabin lights shifting from amber to daylight. Ethan reached for Lena's hand. Her skin felt cool, steady now. She exhaled softly. "Are you really going to let this go?" He looked at her, expression unreadable. "Let it go?" "No," he said, voice low and calm. "But I'll handle it quietly." She searched his eyes. "You're planning something." He didn't deny it. "I just believe people like her eventually meet themselves at the end of the runway." Lena frowned softly. "You mean karma?" "Something like that," he replied. "Though karma usually takes its time. I prefer efficiency." Outside the window, the sky opened into a pale wash of light. Below, the city stretched like a glowing circuit board, lines, dots, and runways weaving together like veins. This was Ethan's world, his domain. Rachel's voice cut through the quiet again. "I still can't believe how unprofessional this airline is. Just wait. I'll make a call and this crew will regret treating me like this." No one replied. Even the nearby passengers had grown tired of her dramatics. The tension in the cabin had shifted, quietly but completely, slipping out of her control and into Ethan's hands. When the flight attendant made her final walkthrough, Ethan spoke softly. "Could you make sure an incident report is filed under her name?" "Of course, sir," the attendant replied. "And please send a copy to airport management." She hesitated only a second before nodding. "Yes, sir. I'll handle it." Rachel smirked, misreading his calm for weakness. "Oh, how sweet. You think paperwork will save you?" "I know people." Ethan met her eyes, steady and unshaken. "So do I." She blinked, unsure how to answer. "What's that supposed to mean?" He leaned back, closing his eyes as if dismissing her entirely. "You'll find out soon enough." The engines lowered their pitch as the plane began its descent. The seatbelt lights flickered on. Trays clicked shut. The calm rhythm of landing covered the quiet undercurrent of tension still hanging in the air. Rachel sighed dramatically. "Finally. I can't wait to get off this flying circus." Ethan stayed still, his thoughts already beyond the cabin, past the runway, past the terminal. He could see the arrivals gate in his mind, the staff waiting, the chain of messages already set in motion. Hours earlier, he had sent one discreet text through the plane's Wi-Fi, Flight 217. Passenger Rachel M. requests security and PR on arrival. Lena caught the faint glint in his eyes as the cloud slid past the window. "What did you do?" she asked quietly. He smiled slightly. "Just making sure she finds the right person to complain to." The tires hit the runway with a heavy thud. The engines roared in reverse, shaking the cabin as the plane slowed. Phones lit up, passengers stretched, life resumed. But in row 14, the air still felt thick. Rachel unbuckled her seatbelt before the chime sounded, jumping up as the plane taxied. "Finally, let's end this nightmare." She straightened her bright orange blazer and grabbed her designer tote, nearly spilling another passenger's drink. "Ma'am, please remain seated until we reach the gate," the attendant said politely. Rachel shot her a glare. "Oh, relax. You've done enough for one flight." Ethan exhaled quietly, leaning toward Lena. "Stay seated until they say so," he murmured. She nodded, her hand resting gently on his arm. The plane came to a stop at the gate. The chime sounded. Rachel was already in the aisle, pushing past others and muttering about incompetent staff and entitled passengers. Ethan and Lena waited calmly. When they finally stood, he placed a steady hand on his wife's back, guiding her forward with quiet composure. At the door, a flight attendant stepped in front of Rachel. "Ma'am, please wait here a moment. Our ground team would like a quick word before you exit." Rachel frowned. "Excuse me? I have a connecting flight. I'm sorry, ma'am. It's mandatory." "Mandatory for what?" she snapped. The attendant's smile stayed professional. "You'll need to speak with airport management." Rachel turned, glaring at Ethan and Lena. "You think you can get me in trouble? This is unbelievable. I'll be speaking to your supervisor." Ethan met her gaze, voice calm as steel. "You will." The jet bridge echoed with footsteps as passengers hurried past, sneaking curious glances. Two security officers and a woman in a navy suit, clearly a PR manager, approached. "Ms. Rachel M., correct?" the woman asked politely. Rachel straightened, relieved. "Finally, someone in charge. I've been humiliated and mistreated on this flight." The PR manager exchanged a subtle glance with the officers. "I see. Let's discuss this somewhere private." Rachel smiled smugly, mistaking professionalism for sympathy. "Good. Maybe someone competent will finally listen." They guided her to a quiet corner near the terminal wall. Some passengers whispered, others filmed discreetly. Murmurs spread. This was the same woman who'd caused a scene mid-flight. Ethan and Lena stepped off the plane next. The PR manager turned toward them and nodded respectfully. "Mr. Cole, Mrs. Cole," Rachel froze. "Wait, you know them?" Ethan smiled faintly. "We've worked together a long time." Rachel blinked, confused. "You? What do you mean?" "Who are you?" He reached into his jacket and handed the PR manager a folded document. "Add this to her file, please." Rachel's voice rose. "Her file? What are you talking about?" The PR manager looked at her calmly. "Ms. Rachel M., based on reports from both crew and passengers, will be initiating a conduct review. For your awareness, this airport operates under the Cole Aviation Group." Rachel's face went pale. "Cole, what?" Ethan stepped closer, his tone quiet but unyielding. "Cole Aviation. We own and manage 62 airports across the country, including this one." He paused, eyes meeting hers. "You wanted to speak to the owner." He gave a small final smile. "You're looking at him." The air seemed to crystallize. Passengers who had lingered nearby fell into quiet whispers. Rachel's mouth opened, but no sound came out. You're lying." "No one just owns airports." Ethan's calm smile didn't fade. "You'd be surprised what people can own when they build instead of complain." The PR manager stepped forward, her tone professional. "Per policy, we'll be forwarding this incident to our partner airlines and airport conduct offices. Ms. M., your behavior violated multiple safety and civility standards." Rachel's voice cracked. "This is ridiculous. You can't blacklist me from an airport." Ethan's tone stayed measured, almost gentle. "Not one airport. 62, and every partner airline under contract with us." Her breath caught. The color drained from her face. "You can't do this, I'll sue." "You're welcome to try," he replied evenly. "But we'll be submitting passenger and crew video evidence. You threw hot liquid at someone, then bragged about it." Rachel's voice broke into a whisper. "It was an accident." "No," he said softly. "It was arrogance." Lena stood beside him, silent but steady. Her calm presence spoke louder than anger ever could. A security officer stepped forward. "Ma'am, please come with us to the security office for processing." Rachel's movements turned frantic. "This is harassment." "You can't." The officers remained composed, guiding her down the corridor as she protested. Cameras followed, capturing the moment her entitlement finally met accountability. When she disappeared around the corner, Ethan released a slow breath. The rush of adrenaline melted into quiet calm. He turned to Lena. "You all right?" She nodded. "Better now?" "You handled it with grace," he said softly. "I wanted her to see what real composure looks like." Lena smiled faintly. And maybe to see who she was really yelling at? He gave a small shrug. Maybe. But mostly I wanted her to understand that actions have altitude. They can crash just as easily as they climb. They walked through the terminal together. The crowd parted instinctively, some passengers offering grateful nods or quiet words of respect. At the exit, Lena glanced back toward the security hallway. Do you think she'll change? Ethan's gaze followed hers. People like that rarely change, he said. But they remember who grounded them. Outside, sunlight gleamed on the tails of aircraft lined along the tarmac, each carrying the silver emblem of Cole Aviation. Justice, not shouted but shown. A young attendant hurried toward them, slightly out of breath. Mr. Cole, sir, security confirmed the report. Should we add her to the restricted list permanently? Ethan paused, thoughtful. No, let her fly commercial again. But whenever she passes through one of our airports, make sure the staff remembers her name. Yes, sir. The attendant walked off, smiling faintly. Lena raised an eyebrow. That's mercy. It's better, Ethan replied. It's memory. They reached the waiting black sedan. The driver opened the door with a courteous nod. As Lena stepped in, Ethan looked back through the glass at the busy terminal. In the distance, Rachel was still surrounded by officers, arguing, her words fading beneath the hum of engines and announcements. He turned back to his wife, voice calm and certain. You know the funny thing? What? She asked. She said she wanted to speak to the airport owner. He smiled slightly as he closed the door. She just didn't expect him to listen. The car pulled away, merging into the flow of traffic as a jet lifted into the sky above, its engines roaring like quiet applause. Inside the terminal, order returned. And somewhere in the network of 62 airports, a single name was already marked, not in anger but in consequence.